The summer of 1874 nearly killed them all. Dust choked the Missouri plains like a living thing, and the corn never reached anyone's ears. Clara Whitmore watched her father bury more people than he'd ever baptized. Cholera took them fast, hunger took them slow. When Reverend Whitmore himself fell sick in June, there wasn't a doctor left to call. He died holding his Bible, leaving Clara with nothing but debts to men harder than the parched earth itself. She was 19. Too old to be called a girl, too young to know what came next. That's when Aunt Miriam arrived from St. Louis with a solution Clara never saw coming. "A girl alone can't survive out here," Miriam said, fanning herself with a church bulletin. "But there's a matrimonial gazette. Men out west, settlers, ranchers, even lawmen. They're looking for wives. They'll pay your passage if you agree to marry." Clara stared at the newspaper notice like it was written in a foreign language. "Honest man of 30 seeks God-fearing bride for ranching life in Arizona territory. Faith and fortitude required. Write to Samuel Crow, San Miguel." The name sounded steady. Safe. She wrote him that same night, not expecting anything. But 2 weeks later, an envelope arrived with train tickets, a simple ring, and a letter promising a fresh start. What she didn't know was that Samuel Crow was hiding something that would change everything. On the morning she left Missouri, Clara stood at the station with a carpetbag and her father's Bible. The train whistle cut through her like a knife. She stepped aboard, heading west into a future she couldn't imagine. 6 days of rattling tracks carried her from green fields to red rock, from cool rain to blistering sun. The other passengers eyed her, a lone girl traveling under a wedding promise to a man she'd never met. She barely slept. In her dreams, she imagined him, fair-haired, strong-jawed, gentle-hearted. She was wrong about all of it. When the train finally hissed to a stop at San Miguel Station, Clara stepped down in her pale blue dress, clutching the photograph he'd sent, a man in a wide hat with a mustache. She scanned the platform. No one approached. Then the sheriff himself walked over, removing his hat with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You Miss Whitmore?" he asked. "Yes. I'm here to meet Samuel Crow." The sheriff shifted uncomfortably. "He's waiting outside town. I'll be straight with you, ma'am. He ain't what most would call a typical settler." Clara's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "You'll see." A wagon waited beyond the station, drawn by 2 lean Mustangs. The driver was a young Apache boy with black hair tied back with leather. He said nothing, just motioned for her to climb in. They rode in silence, the town fading behind them, replaced by endless desert. As the sun bled red over the horizon, Clara saw smoke rising from a cluster of lodges in a valley below. Her pulse hammered. "Where are we going?" The boy spoke for the first time. "To Nantan Lobo, Samuel Crow." The name hit her like thunder. Apache. Her hands clenched the seat. "There's been a mistake. I was supposed to marry a white settler." But there was no mistake. When they arrived, warriors stood around the campfire, watching her with sharp, unreadable eyes. Then one man stepped forward, tall, broad-shouldered, with a scar down one cheek and eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore no hat, only long, dark hair bound with copper beads. He spoke quietly, his English perfect. "You are Clara Whitmore." She could barely breathe. "I came to marry Samuel Crow. That is my name among your people." The world tilted beneath her feet. You deceived me." His gaze didn't waver. "The letter was written by my friend. We made a promise for peace. The white settlers fear us. They trust more when one of us takes a white wife. It was not meant to shame you." Clara took a trembling step back. "You can't expect me to go through with this." "I must," he said simply. "The treaty depends on it. So do lives. Mine and my people's." Tears stung her eyes. "And what of my life?" He looked at her, truly looked, and something in his face softened. "You are free to choose. But if you refuse, the treaty breaks, and blood will come again. I would not force you. Yet if you stay, I will honor you as my wife." She stood there, 1,000 miles from home, facing an impossible choice. What happened next shocked everyone, including herself. The ceremony was simple. Apache elders spoke words in their tongue. The sheriff and 2 settlers served as witnesses. Clara stood silent, her heart a storm of anger, fear, and something else she couldn't name. The man beside her, her husband, never touched her, never spoke above a whisper. When it was done, he placed a hand over his heart. "From this day, you are called White Dove. My people will protect you." That night, under a blaze of desert stars, she sat alone by the fire. He approached quietly, carrying a wrapped bundle. "This is for you," he said, setting it before her. A small wooden box carved with unfamiliar symbols. A wedding gift. She brushed her fingers over the smooth lid. "What's inside?" He gave a faint smile. "You will know when the time is right." Then he walked away, leaving her with the firelight and the distant echo of drums. She lifted the box, feeling its mysterious weight. Something in that wild crimson land began to shift inside her, the first crack in the wall between fear and fate. The dawn after her wedding rose soft and red. Clara sat outside the lodge she'd been given, feeling the weight of her new life settle like sand in her chest. Every sound of the night had been strange. Coyotes, distant chanting, drums that seemed to echo through the ground itself. When she opened her eyes, her husband was gone. Only his blanket lay folded beside hers. When he returned, he carried a basin of water and a folded blanket. "You should wash. The day will be hot." She hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you." He set the basin down without looking directly at her. "You will meet my people today. Some will not like you. They do not trust easily. But if you walk with respect, they will see." "I don't belong here," she whispered. He met her eyes, gray and unflinching. "Neither did my mother once." Clara frowned. "Your mother?" She was half white, taken from a settlement near Tucson when she was a girl. But she stayed. She learned our ways. When she died, our people said her spirit rides with the hawks. The revelation hung in the air between them, changing everything she thought she knew. That day, she followed him through the camp. Women ground maize, children ran barefoot, men watched her in silence, not cruelly, but warily. A few women approached, offering woven bread and soft smiles. One older woman, lined with years, touched Clara's hand gently. "White Dove," she said in halting English. "You strong. He choose well." Clara looked to Nantan in confusion. "She says you have a brave heart," he translated softly. A strange warmth stirred in her then. Not love, not yet, but something that eased the fear. As days passed, she learned more about Samuel Crow. He wasn't just a warrior. He was a trader, dealing horses, hides, and silver with nearby towns. He could read and write, spoke English, Spanish, and Apache. When he rode into San Miguel, even the sheriff tipped his hat. Once she asked him why he'd chosen the name Samuel Crow. He smiled faintly. "My white teacher gave it to me when I was a boy," he said. "The crow is clever. He survives what others cannot." I took it for my own. "You had a teacher?" He nodded. "A missionary. Before your people burned his mission, he taught me words. Words can build bridges," he said. "I have tried to remember that." At night, he taught her some of his own language. Simple words at first: water, sun, heart. He laughed softly when she stumbled over the pronunciation, a sound that startled her with its warmth. Slowly, without realizing when it began, Clara stopped feeling like a prisoner. Then came the day that changed everything between them. One afternoon, while fetching water, she heard the sharp rattle of a snake. She froze, spotting the coiled diamondback inches from her skirts. Panic stole her breath. Before she could move, a blur of motion swept between them. Nantan, his knife flashing once in the sun. The serpent fell still. He turned to her, eyes dark with concern. "You must always look where you step." She could only nod, trembling. You saved me." He sheathed the blade, his expression unreadable. You were under my protection. Until death. That night, fever from shock overtook her. She woke to find him sitting beside her, cooling her brow with damp cloths, whispering words in Apache she couldn't understand. His touch was careful, never bold, his gaze turned away except when necessary. By morning her fever broke. She opened her eyes to find the first light touching his face. Strong, solemn, handsome in a way she'd never noticed before. You should rest, he said softly. You watched all night? He didn't answer, only poured her water from a clay jug. Something unspoken passed between them then, fragile as the desert dawn. A respect that neither had asked for, but both could feel. When she could stand again, he brought her the wooden box once more. Your wedding gift, he said simply. She turned it over, curious. What's inside? His lips curved in that quiet half-smile. Something you will understand when the time is right. But when will that be? He looked toward the red cliffs beyond camp. When you know that not all gifts are meant to be touched. Some must be felt. The mystery deepened, and Clara realized she was falling into something far more dangerous than desert heat. Over the following weeks, she saw sides of him no white woman ever had. He spoke with his warriors about crops and defense, never raising his voice. He traded fairly with settlers, even when they treated him with suspicion. Among his people, his word was law. Clara began to see a truth the world refused to admit. This man was not a savage, but a leader born of patience, pain, and pride. Still, there were nights she wept quietly, remembering Missouri, the rain on the church roof, her father's voice reading psalms. Yet when she looked at the endless desert stars, she couldn't deny the strange beauty of this place. The silence, the space, the way the wind seemed to sing through the canyons. And sometimes, when she caught Nantan watching her across the fire, that same wind seemed to whisper something she dared not name. One evening, the old woman approached again, handing Clara a woven shawl. For wife of Nantan Lobo, he brave man. He need brave woman. Clara's heart fluttered oddly. Later, when she told Nantan what the woman had said, he gave a small, knowing nod. She is right. You are stronger than you think, White Dove. She looked at him, really looked at the scar on his jaw, the steadiness in his eyes, the quiet sorrow that never quite left his face. For the first time, Clara Whitmore of Missouri wondered if her coming here had been fate, not misfortune. But fate, she was about to learn, had far more in store than she could imagine. Autumn crept into Arizona with quiet menace. Days burned fierce, nights turned cold, and the air sharpened with mesquite smoke. Clara had learned to rise before dawn and grind maize with the other women. Her hands had blistered, then calloused. She wore woven skirts now, and her skin had darkened to bronze. The people no longer stared. Some even nodded in greeting. But peace in the camp was fragile as glass. Rumors drifted from San Miguel. Cattle stolen from settlers. Wagons raided along the river trail. Clara overheard the men talking in low voices, the way soldiers do before battle. The name Apache was whispered with fear in town and bitterness in the hills. One afternoon, Nantan rode in from the trading post, his horse lathered and his eyes grim. He dismounted and went straight to where Clara was mending a blanket. Pack what you need, he said quietly. We may have to leave for the high country. She looked up sharply. Leave? Why? The settlers say my people stole cattle from their ranches. Her heart clenched. Did they? He shook his head. No. But outlaws ride under our shadow. White men see hoofprints and think them ours. The sheriff sent men to investigate. It will not end with questions. She rose, gripping the fabric. Can't you speak to them? You trade with them. They trust you. Nantan gave a faint, weary smile. Trust dies quicker than love, White Dove. That night, fires burned higher and sentries doubled their watch. Clara lay awake, listening to distant coyotes and the whisper of drums. Fear and sorrow twisted together inside her, not just for herself, but for the people she'd come to understand. By morning, she made a decision that would shock everyone. When Nantan saddled his horse to ride to San Miguel, she stepped in front of him. "I'm coming with you," she said firmly. His brows furrowed. "No, it's dangerous. The whites may not see you as one of them now." "Then let them see me as your wife. Maybe that will remind them we're not enemies." For a moment he stared at her. Then he nodded once. "Very well. But you stay close." They rode through the desert together. He on his painted stallion, she on a smaller bay mare. The air shimmered with heat. From a distance, San Miguel looked peaceful. But as they drew closer, Clara saw men gathered by the saloon, rifles slung across their shoulders. The sheriff stepped forward, looking startled. "Miss Whitmore," he caught himself. "Mrs. Crow." Clara dismounted and faced him squarely. "You know my husband is an honest man, Sheriff. Tell them so." The sheriff's eyes shifted nervously. "It ain't that simple, ma'am. Some folks say they seen Apaches near the Murphy Ranch the night the cattle went missing." "And some folks will see what they want to see," she replied, her voice firm as steel. "Do you have proof?" He hesitated. In that silence, the crowd began to murmur. A rancher spat in the dirt. "Proof? We don't need it. You bring savages into our towns, you get blood." Nantan's gaze didn't waver. "If you seek blood, look to the men who profit from it." The tension snapped like a whip. The sheriff barked for calm, but the hatred in the air was thick. Clara felt it pressing against her chest. The fear, the fury, the ignorance. She stepped forward, her heart pounding. "If you harm this man, you'll answer to me. He is my husband, and I will stand with him." The words stunned everyone, including Nantan. A hush fell. After a long moment, the sheriff cleared his throat. "All right, no one's hanging anyone today. But keep your people clear of town, Crow. Tensions are high." Nantan nodded once, and they rode out. Only when they were miles from the settlement did Clara release the breath she'd been holding. "You shouldn't have done that," Nantan said quietly. "They could have turned on you. I couldn't just stand there. I couldn't let them talk about you that way." He looked at her then, long and searching. "You spoke like a warrior." She gave a shaky smile. Or maybe just a wife who's tired of being afraid. That night, back at camp, the air between them felt different. Charged like lightning waiting to strike. As they sat by the fire, he handed her a cup of sweet cactus wine. "Why did you defend me, White Dove?" he asked. She met his gaze. "Because I see you. Not what they say you are. What you truly are." His eyes darkened. He leaned closer, voice low. "And what do you see?" Her breath caught. "A man who carries more honor in silence than most do in words." He smiled faintly, then looked toward the fire. "You are brave, Clara Whitmore. Too brave for this world, maybe." The silence that followed was thick with things neither dared to speak. And in that stillness, she realized the fear she once felt for him had turned to something far more dangerous. Trust. But trust, she was about to discover, would be tested in ways she never imagined. Days passed. Peace held. But barely. Then one moonless night, chaos came roaring back. Clara woke to the smell of smoke and the sound of shouting. The camp was burning. Lodges in flame, horses screaming in terror, gunshots cracking through the night. She stumbled out of her hut to see masked riders storming the camp, torches in hand. "Nantan!" she screamed. He appeared through the smoke, firing his rifle with deadly precision. "Get back! Hide!" But before she could move, a blast threw her to the ground. The world spun, fire licking the edges of her vision. When she came to, the camp was chaos. Warriors fighting back with bows and rifles, women dragging children to safety. Nantan was surrounded. 3 outlaws bore down on him, one striking him across the head with a rifle butt. He fell, dazed, blood streaking his temple. "Leave him!" Clara cried, running forward. But a hand seized her arm. It was the old woman who'd called her brave. "No, White Dove," she said fiercely. "If you die, hope dies too." The words burned. Clara looked once more toward Nantan, bound, being dragged toward the canyon, and made a choice that tore her soul in two. She ran. Through the smoke and screams, she fled into the desert, clutching only one thing: the small wooden box he'd given her. She didn't know where she was going, only that she couldn't let it fall into their hands. By dawn, she collapsed beneath a sandstone arch, her dress torn, her throat raw from dust. The horizon flamed with sunrise. She pulled the box from her satchel and held it to her chest, weeping. Inside that simple carving lay the last piece of him she had left. She pressed her forehead against it and whispered, "Please, God, don't let that be the end." And as the wind rose through the canyon, Clara Whitmore vowed she would not rest until she found her husband again, no matter how far she had to ride. But what she found inside that box would change everything she thought she knew about love, freedom, and destiny. The desert at dawn was cruel and beautiful, quiet as death, vast as eternity. Clara lay beneath a crooked mesquite tree, her face streaked with soot and tears. Nantan was gone, captured by men who saw him not as a husband but as a savage worth hanging. She sat up, throat burning. The wind carried faint echoes of hooves, distant, fading westward. They were taking him to San Miguel, the same town that had spat his name like poison, the same town she'd defended him in, and she was the only one who could stop them. Clara stood shakily. Around her neck hung the silver crucifix her father had given her. She pressed it to her lips. "I won't lose him. Not like this." Her mare stood nearby, still trembling from the night's chaos. Clara soothed her with a shaking hand. "We're going to find him, girl. We're going to bring him home." The ride was agony. The land stretched endless. Red mesas, dry riverbeds, scattered sage. Heat shimmered off the sand in waves. But Clara rode on, guided by instinct and the tracks she could still faintly see. Each mile stripped away another piece of the girl she once was, the preacher's daughter from Missouri, the frightened bride in a blue dress. What remained was harder, leaner, carved by the desert itself. By midday, the sun was merciless. Her lips cracked. Her body screamed for rest. She shaded her eyes and spotted movement in the distance, a column of black smoke rising beyond the canyon rim. Cautiously, she rode closer. As she reached the crest of a ridge, she saw them. 5 riders gathered near rocks, their horses tethered, rifles glinting. And tied to a post at the camp's edge, beaten and bloodied but alive, was Nantan. Her heart nearly stopped. She slid from her horse and crouched behind a boulder, watching. The outlaws were drinking, laughing. One tossed a tin cup into the fire. Another paced near Nantan, jeering. "Filthy Apache! You thought you could outsmart us? We'll fetch a good price for your scalp." Nantan said nothing. His head hung low, blood streaking down one cheek. Yet even in defeat, he held himself with quiet dignity. Clara's hands shook. She had no weapon, only her courage, and the wooden box still strapped to her side. She looked at it now, desperate. It had been his gift, sealed since their wedding night. Something in her heart whispered, "Now." With trembling fingers, she untied the cord and lifted the lid. Inside lay a folded piece of woven cloth, a sash of crimson and gold, and a letter written in both English and Apache. The paper was weathered, the writing firm and precise. "Clara, if ever you open this, it means the path has tested your heart. You are free. Free to leave me and return to your world, or free to stay and make this one your own. I will never bind you, not in body or spirit. This cloth is the mark of a wife among my people, but you may wear it only if you choose me, not from duty, but from love. Nantan Lobo, Samuel Crow." Tears blurred the words. For so long she'd thought the box a mystery meant to control her, when all along it had been the opposite, a vow of freedom, a gift of choice. Her breath shuddered out. "You fool," she whispered, smiling through tears. "You noble, impossible man." Something fierce and new ignited in her chest. Love, clear, bright, burning as the desert sun. She tore a strip from her skirt, tied the crimson sash across her shoulders, and looked toward the camp. "I'm coming, Nantan," she whispered. Then she mounted her horse and rode down into the canyon like a ghost from the sun. What happened next became legend. The first outlaw saw her too late. She charged through their camp, scattering their horses with a scream that made the desert echo. Her mare struck one man square in the chest. Clara snatched up his dropped rifle and fired, the report splitting the silence. Nantan's head jerked up. "Clara!" She galloped toward him, bullets whining past her ears. One outlaw lunged at her. She swung the rifle butt hard, sending him tumbling into the fire. Flames roared. Nantan, though half-conscious, managed to twist against his bindings. "Cut me loose!" She slid from the saddle and slashed at the ropes with a knife she'd taken from the fallen man. The last outlaw raised his gun, but before he could fire, a war cry split the air. From the ridges above came the thunder of hooves. Nantan's brother Tossa led a small band of Apache riders down the slope, arrows whistling through the air. The outlaws scattered, overwhelmed. In the chaos, Nantan pulled Clara behind a rock, shielding her with his body. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, tears streaking her dust-stained cheeks. "No. But you—" "I'm all right." He looked at her then, seeing the crimson sash tied over her shoulder. His breath caught. "You opened it." She nodded, voice trembling. "I chose you, Nantan. I choose you." For a moment, everything fell away. The gunfire, the smoke, the world. There was only his gaze, fierce and full of wonder. When the fighting ended, Tossa dismounted and approached. Blood on his arm, but a grin splitting his face. "You have brave woman, brother," he said in Apache. "She rides like the storm." Nantan smiled faintly. "Like the storm and the dawn." Clara leaned against him, her body finally giving way to exhaustion. His arm wrapped around her, steady and strong. As the last flames died and the wind cooled the canyon, she whispered, "I thought I'd lost you." "You can never lose what rides within your heart," he murmured. She looked up at him, eyes shining. "Then promise me you'll never ride alone again." He brushed a thumb across her cheek, gentle as the desert wind. "Not while you breathe, White Dove." They left the canyon at sunset, the sky bleeding gold and crimson, the same colors as the sash she wore. Behind them, the tracks of battle faded into dust. Ahead, the road wound back toward home. That night, as they made camp beneath a star-laden sky, Clara lay beside him, her head on his shoulder, the fire crackling low. "Your gift," she whispered. "It wasn't just freedom, was it?" He smiled softly. "No, it was my heart, given to the one woman strong enough to carry it." And as the desert wind sighed through the canyon, Clara knew she had found not only her husband but her destiny. But their story was far from over. In fact, the most important chapter was just beginning. Weeks passed before the desert knew peace again. The smoke from that fateful battle drifted away, leaving only faint scars on the canyon walls. Nantan healed slowly, the wound on his shoulder turning to a pale scar. Clara never left his side. Each day she helped rebuild lodges, mended hides, carried water from the river. The people no longer looked at her with suspicion. Children followed her now, laughing as she taught them English words. The older women smiled when they saw her wearing the crimson and gold sash, the mark of a true Apache wife. Even Tossa, who'd once doubted her, bowed his head when he passed. "The White Dove has fire in her heart," he told the others. "She rides beside the chief, not behind him." For the first time in her 19 years, Clara felt she belonged somewhere, not as a guest, not as a stranger, but as part of something larger, older, stronger than herself. One evening, as twilight melted into the canyon, she found Nantan sitting near the edge of a cliff, gazing out over the desert plains. "You should rest," she said softly, stepping beside him. "I rest when the land does," he replied. "There are still men who hate what they cannot understand." She sat beside him. "Then let them see what love can build. Let them see that peace isn't weakness." He smiled faintly. You speak like a chief's wife. And you speak like a man who forgets he has one. He laughed, a quiet, rumbling sound she'd come to love. Perhaps I do. They fell into comfortable silence, the kind that comes only when two hearts beat in the same rhythm. I have something for you, he said suddenly. He reached into the pouch at his side and drew out a small object, a pendant of silver, shaped like a bird in flight. It caught the firelight, gleaming warm against his palm. Clara looked at it, puzzled. It's beautiful. But what is it? He turned it over, revealing the metal's uneven texture. It was once the lock from your wedding box. I melted it down and shaped it with my hands. She gasped softly, tears springing to her eyes. The box? But why? Because locks keep hearts closed, he said quietly. And yours opened mine. Her breath caught. She took the pendant in her hands, feeling its warmth, its weight, its meaning. Nantan. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. Wear it always. It is not gold or silver that gives it worth, but the story it holds. A gift from the man who once thought love was a chain and learned it was a wind instead. Her throat ached with emotion. And what of me? What do I give in return? He smiled softly. You've already given it. You stayed. The wind shifted then, carrying the scent of rain, a rare blessing in the desert. Far off, thunder rolled like the drumbeat of the earth itself. Clara rose and looked toward the horizon where clouds gathered in dark folds. Rain. It's coming. Nantan stood and wrapped an arm around her waist. The land drinks, and life begins again. When the storm broke, the tribe rejoiced. Men lifted their faces to the sky. Women sang. Children danced barefoot in the red mud. Clara laughed among them, the rain soaking her hair, her skirt, her skin. She felt alive. More alive than she'd ever been in Missouri. More than in the narrow pews of her father's church. And in that laughter, in that storm, she understood what her marriage truly was. Not a contract of survival, but a covenant written by the wind, sealed by the rain. But the greatest test of that covenant was still to come. The months that followed brought change beyond the canyon. Word of the Apache woman, the white bride who defended her husband in front of an armed crowd, spread through the towns. The story softened hearts, little by little. When spring came, the sheriff of San Miguel rode to the camp with a small escort. He dismounted and approached Nantan with an awkward bow. "Crow," he said. "We've drawn up new trade terms with the ranchers. I reckon it's time we ended this fight, and for good. You'll have safe passage to town, and fair pay for your horses." Nantan studied the man, then offered his hand. "And your people will have safe passage here. No blood for blood." The sheriff nodded, then turned to Clara. "You done more than you know, ma'am. Never thought I'd see peace like this in my time." Clara smiled. "Peace isn't given, Sheriff. It's built." That night, a celebration was held. Fires blazed across the valley. Drums echoed against the cliffs. Laughter rose into the star-strewn sky. Whites and Apaches sat side by side, breaking bread, trading stories, watching the same flames dance between them. Clara wore the silver bird around her neck, gleaming against her sun-kissed skin. When Nantan took her hand and led her before the gathered people, silence fell. He raised his voice so all could hear. "Once I took a wife for peace. I thought duty was stronger than love. But this woman taught me otherwise. She gave her heart not to a name, not to a people, but to the truth between two souls." He turned to her then, eyes shining in the firelight. "Clara Whitmore of Missouri, white dove who rides with fire, will you stand with me again? Not as a bride of treaty, but as a wife of choice." Her heart swelled, tears glimmering. "I will." He smiled, that quiet, storm-gray smile she'd first seen at the train station so long ago. Then he placed the pendant against her chest, his thumb brushing her heartbeat. "Then let all who hear the wind know, our hearts are one." Cheers rose around them, the voices of two worlds mingling into one song, a sound that carried far beyond the camp, beyond the canyons, into the very soul of the desert. Later, when the fires burned low and the stars hung heavy above, Clara and Nantan walked together to the edge of the cliff where it had all begun. The night air was cool, scented with rain and smoke. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked softly. "That letter you sent? The one that brought me here?" He smiled faintly. "Only that I did not send it sooner." She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. "Then we both found what we were meant to." Below them, the desert stretched silent and infinite, not a place of death, but of rebirth. And as the wind stirred the sand into whispering shapes, Clara Whitmore knew the truth she would carry for the rest of her days. She had not been forced into a marriage. She had been led to a destiny, one written in the language of the land, sealed with rain, and crowned by a gift of the heart. Their story became legend in both worlds, a tale of a preacher's daughter who crossed the desert to marry a stranger, opened a box that set her free, and discovered that the greatest journey isn't measured in miles, but in the courage to choose love over fear. If you loved this incredible true story of Clara and Nantan, don't forget to subscribe. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what shocked you most about this tale. Was it the moment she opened the box, the battle in the canyon, or the fact that love can bridge even the widest divide? Let me know below, and stay tuned for more unbelievable stories that will leave you speechless.